Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to this dialogue. This is the final one we're having this academic year. As you can see behind you, we have the title, What Does It Mean for the University to be International? And even, does it matter? So it's a deceptively difficult question, as indeed it's intended to be. So my role today, I'm Bruce Macfarlane. I'm co-director of the Centre for Leadership and Policy Studies, Higher Education Leadership and Policy Studies, is as the chair of this discussion. So it's a discussion with three panelists and all of you guys. So please, what we want is a discussion. So first of all, let me just introduce the panel to you. First of all, on my left, we're very pleased and honoured to have Professor Xiao Mok. Welcome. And Professor Xiao Mok, of course, is a former member of this university, but he's also, until very recently, the Vice President and Lam Man Chan Chair Professor of Comparative Policy at Lingnan University. Although from the 1st of June, he is now the Provost and Vice President Academic and Research, Hanseng University. So he's doing everything now. He's doing not just a VP for academic, but also research. He's a renowned expert on higher education policy, governance and comparative development, so he's very well known in Hong Kong and internationally. Then at the far end of the table we have Dr. Ivy Zhao Han, and Ivy is Assistant Professor in the Department of... yes, welcome. This is Assistant Professor in the Department of International Education and also a Fellow of CHELPS as well. She's a sociologist with interests in Borgesian studies. I think it's a difficult word to say, isn't it? Let alone understand, but that's one of the things she specializes in. Governmentality, internationalization, and transnationalism as well. And then in the middle here we have Professor Anatoly Oleksiyenko. So Anatoly is Professor of International Higher Education in the Department of International Education and also co-director of CHELPS with me. He's an expert in comparative and international higher education and has written about many things such as cross-cultural learning, power dynamics and international partnerships. So that's the panel, and so it's now time for me to stop talking and to hear from them. So they're going to each give you their take on the question. So it won't necessarily be contradictory, but it may be raising different points and perspectives about this question. And I'm going to start with Professor Xiao Mok.
Okay, thank you very much, Bruce, and thank you for having me to come back to Education University. I spent about 5 years here, dates back in 2010, working with my colleagues for establishing this university. I think that congratulations to your center for choosing a very important theme today. What does it mean for the university to become international? And the second part of the question, does it matter? So I would like to reflect on this question by looking into a few aspects. Number one is how, as an individual researchers, I think this is one aspect. Second is about institutional dimension, talk about university. Last but not the least is about the society at large. What does it mean to Hong Kong? So I go to think about for Hong Kong society as a whole, internationalization is extremely important to position Hong Kong as an international higher education hub in Asia, of Asia or for Asia, no matter how we call it and position it. I think it's not a slogan. We look into the substance of internationalization. It's not only about talking about signing MOU, having only student exchange, faculty member collaboration, and what Hong Kong needs is about differentiating Hong Kong with other cities in the neighborhood, particularly from mainland Chinese cities. So a deeper question is, if Hong Kong is not international, what Hong Kong can offer? So in terms of research money, I think our neighborhood, particularly in mainland, university, they have much more resources in research in terms of investment, though people may talk about because of the COVID economic conditions, maybe scaling down a bit, but still looking into the amount of money being invested in university, no matter research or other development, I think we could not compare anyway. But what differentiates Hong Kong from other sister universities elsewhere in the Bay Area or in the country or in the neighborhood like East Asia, like Japan, Korea, and also in Southeast Asia. I think what makes Hong Kong different would be how international we are. Internationalization is not only about the language, but also the mindset for being open to cultures, religions, histories, politics, and everything you can name it. The whole idea is preparing our citizens to become more open in accepting we are different, but how to engage our citizens to become more embracing in terms of diversity at the society level is Hong Kong. At the institutional level, again, this is so important, and congratulate the Dean and also the center head for recruiting and verifying a group of researchers and students joining EdU. I think your presence would have made the learning environment different. You just imagine, because so many students have come from similar origins, and if any diversity in the population, in terms of student number, in terms of faculty, certainly you guys have made significant contributions to the learning environment and also to the research environment. So if you think about the university, I'm humbly enough to serve as a manager of university. I think one of the major agenda pushing for universities in Hong Kong is about how international we are. Again, it's not only about counting how many MOU we signed, it's how we really turn with the reality about student mobility, our curriculum, our open-mindedness in terms of teaching and learning, and more importantly about the area about research. Because to me, I think it's a truly humbling experience in the last couple of years of the COVID global health crisis. It's truly a humbling experience, because no single leader or a medical professional could come out to solve about the immediate problem about anti-COVID in terms of medical care, social care, and it has taught me to be more humble that we certainly to have 3C, collaboration, cooperation, and also co-promotion of solutions of the complex world. Second is about university level. As an individual, a researcher level, I think I truly enjoy working with people from different cultures. It makes my life more fulfilling and making me know that I'm only part of the citizens of the global village, and to be more appreciative about the diversity that we are facing every day, and appreciate how cultures, how politics, and how differences could shape a university and also shape the society. So I think as an individual, I think this is extremely important. So going down about another level is about student learning. I think you guys have contributed significantly not only to Hong Kong University, but also making the student learning very different. Imagine that we just talked about, we went to HERA conference in Taipei last week, and maybe we further about the experience in Taiwan universities. I really have some doubt about how serious they are in terms of internationalization. And certainly weaken their position regionally and globally if they are not very keen about making international dimension in education, research, and also wider engagements. So based upon that sort of critical reflection, I would think that Hong Kong is so privileged to have the open environment, though the international media always portray Hong Kong universities are dying. I kept telling people we are fine. The two fundamental principles still hold university in Hong Kong different. One is academic freedom, another one is about institutional autonomy. We can choose to be international with a reason, with a purpose, because we are educating our future younger generations, preparing them for uncertain future. So I have a dream. The dream is to nurturing our future leaders, our young professionals. They are caring leaders with global vision. Global, it doesn't mean that they have to take everything from the global world without digesting about how far the global value will be adapting to the local. I think globalization is something that we talk about, and when we engage in transnational higher education projects or programs. So I just stop here and encouraging more comments and questions from the floor and also my panelists. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this event. What I did before I came here, I asked ChatGPT, what are the top 10 topics on the theme of internationalization of higher education, right? Because ChatGPT allows to go around the World Wide Web, collect information, consolidate it, and then propose a priority of these topics, right? It's a good tool. But what I saw there was pretty much this kind of hierarchy of topics. Number one was academic excellence. Second was global reputation. Third, diverse and inclusive environment, right? So that's how we study. I mean, when we talk about these issues in internationalization of higher education, this is pretty much the dominant topics or emphasis that people make when they talk about the issues of internationalization. Then internationalization as a strategy is in general, so internationalization for the sake of internationalization, right? Just kind of sometimes we not do it for the sake of global reputation or other issues, but sometimes we talk about internationalization for the sake of internationalization. Then number 5 there was support services, which is also something that we would say, yes, we do, we engage with the policies, we promote this, but what is the support services to our students? Sometimes we don't really discuss that enough. Then surprisingly, I saw innovative teaching and learning going number 6, a little bit kind of, we don't really engage with innovative teaching and learning enough when we talk about internationalization. Number 7, robust research programs, right? 8, quality facilities. So somehow that kind of also influences our thinking about how we engage with all these new facilities, technologies, and so on. And number 9, strong industry connections. So somewhere in the rankings of these topics, there's also industrial development or engagement with industries, probably multinational corporations and so on. And embarrassingly enough, number 10 is commitment to sustainability and social responsibility. And when I reflect on these top 10, I think that in general, this is a correct reflection in terms of how we position all these priorities and themes in our discourse on internationalization of higher education. Social responsibility is still very low in terms of saying internationalization would improve, for example, peace building or creating better environment in general, right? When we learn from each other, we just also learn about challenges we have to meet and work together on. Because climate change is not responsibility of one particular nation, and not particular institution, but it's a global collective responsibility, right? So it's still very low on this priority list. However, it was really interesting when I reflecting on these 10 major topics, I was also thinking about how this would relate to historical developments, because in international mobility, students, faculty members were traveling across jurisdictions and cultures for quite some time. Like in medieval times, there were travels. People didn't probably travel across continents, but they still traveled on the continents. In Asia here, as well as in Europe, there were quite substantial learning elements coming from learning from your colleagues in other nations, right? Although the idea of the nation came a little bit kind of late in terms of how nation states were conceptualized. It's the idea of the 19th century. And when we talk about internationalization at this point in time, we always kind of have concern about to what extent nations are involved in internationalization. Because sometimes when we think about internationalization, we talk about nation states, which should mean policy development, and exchange between nations. However, most of the work which is being done in the academia is not about us talking on behalf of the nation, but us talking on behalf of the discipline and major developments in research and teaching, right? And so at the same time, it's still about internationalization. But sometimes it's confusing because it can be intercultural, cross-cultural, and as ChatGPT suggests, it's a global, reputational, and diversity-oriented type of teaching and learning environment, right? So internationalization discursively, I mean, in terms of how we talk about internationalization, can be quite confusing. And that relates to how institutions later work with these discourses, because institutions sometimes find it quite challenging to really understand what to do with internationalization, where to focus, where to invest, and where to expect returns on investment. Because for institutions, it's very important to have return on investment given the limited resources, given the high expectations from stakeholders, and our major stakeholders are students who want to know how that particular international program contributes to their own reputation, their employment opportunities, their engagement with the networks, and so on and so forth, right? So that's kind of a quite challenging institutional framework when we begin to really reflect on what we do or what we should do when we engage with internationalization as an institutional strategy, right? So that's kind of like, I'll probably stop here. I'll just kind of use 7-8 minutes here just to kind of contribute some key points, and I'll be happy to continue when we have a kind of engaging conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think for the question, what does it mean for the university to be international? Academically, it could be defined that internationalization at home and internationalization abroad. So for the internationalization at home, we want to refine or reform our curriculum to increase the proportion of the international talents, the students, and we also want to promote the collaboration internationally. And for international abroad, we want to, for example, to establish the branch campuses internationally or globally and to promote the national profile. But this is very academic, answer to this question. To me, I think the international, as Anatoly has emphasized, is a very tricky concept, because when we are saying international, we are emphasizing the national borders, just like the differences between the global and international, and also the cross-border and the borderless. So we are trying to emphasize there seems to be an opposition between the international and also the local. So it is always quite curious to me why there is such kind of opposition, and we take it sometimes for granted. We always say, especially for the example in Taiwan, we emphasize we want to publish local, to focus on the local issues. But most of the time, I think a lot of scholars, they just use the Western, for example, concepts or theories to examine the local issues. So to me, I don't think there is an opposition between the international and also the local. So maybe it's time for us to rethink this kind of, opposition. And also for the internationalization for the university, I think it's not only because of we want to move physically across the borders, but also the most important is mentally, how to change our mindset, that we want to be open-minded. I want to use an example to explain that the border not only exists among the nations, but most between or among the disciplines, in not only the science, but also the social science. Today, we emphasize a lot on the interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary collaboration. We want to borrow different concepts or theories from other disciplines, For example, the sociology of education. We want to borrow the concepts or theories from sociology to explore or examine the issues in education. And that is why we talk about the class reproduction and also the unequal power relationships in the higher education institutions, for example. And I want to use one concrete example to further illustrate this issue, that is the concept rationality. We always, build a lot of research upon the concept and the hypothesis of the rational economic maximizer. We consider all the subjects as this kind of rational subject, and we, based on this hypothesis, to develop policies to persuade the students to invest in higher education, and to use this to examine or explore the situations in the labor market. But we may figure out it is not the gold criteria or gold standard, because we see the unemployment or underemployment. So the rationality is not the natural, principle for us to think about the operation of the society. So there is other, branches to focus on the irrationality. And I think we heard the bounded rationality, which was developed by Herbert Simon, the Nobel laureate, who proposed that we may want to make a rational decision, but there are contextual factors to influence us. We cannot do that. We could only do the satisfactory decisions. So we see the behavior economics, and Simon's research is based on the interdisciplinary collaboration between psychology, economics, computer science, and also the cognitive science. So for the rationality, the updated development that scientists are using the neuroscience to detect which part of our brain are working during the decision making. So there is a quite, a prospective future for us to think about this kind of interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary collaboration. And I think that is maybe more important aspect for internationalization in university. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. From all three panelists there, we heard lots of interesting views, definitions, some challenges there. So it's over to all of you. Please, would you like to like to ask a question? And Ching's going to bring the microphone over. I think, okay, Hua and then Yuan. What I'm going to suggest we take a few, and Zhenzhou. So what we'll do is we'll have a little round, okay? We'll have maybe 3 comments, and then I'll go back to the panel. I won't come back with every question. So pens and papers or mindsets or ChatGPT, whatever Anatoly is using, and then I'll come back to the panel to pick out what they want to answer. Hua, first of all.
So I actually have a question in response to the question up there. Do we actually differentiate between international university and internationalized university? Yeah. Because when I look at university, I do have the conceptualization of central universities and peripheral universities. We already have universities top 100 with very high quality education, and basically they are international already. They don't have to internationalize, just such as Lund University in Sweden. You don't have to do any promotion. Every single year, international students rush to that university. Elsewhere, we have universities trying to internationalize. Are they like central university, or are they actually peripheral universities trying to internationalize their higher education to attract international students? So do we need that kind of differentiation in answer to the question?
Thank you. So we'll hear from Zhenzhou and then from Yuan.
So we don't have to. So thanks so much, 3 speakers, and very, very insightful, interesting opinions. Big concern for Hong Kong local young people is to get a good job. If you major in particular kind of majors, for example, electrical engineering, okay? And even you get a degree from HKU, you can't find a job in Hong Kong because we don't have such a kind of job available in the market. So, for me, that's for university to be international, it means our graduates be employable internationally. That means our young Hong Kong people, if they can get a job in Japan, South Korea, Singapore, even Europe. So it's indeed matters because it relates to the purpose of higher education, human development, more choices young people can have for their future development. So my question is, and for our experts, do you have any observation or any thoughts about how to reform, higher education curriculum, for example, Hong Kong's higher education curriculum, to make our graduates become more, that's kind of competitive in the international market? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Over to Ewan, who's sitting over here.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for the presentations. I'm just looking around. We have quite a international or cross-cultural group here, which is a nice for this discussion. And that got me thinking, to what extent do you think a university being international rests on the people, the professors and the students? Or to put it another way, is it possible for a university to be international without non-local staff and students? Thank you.
Okay, we've got 3 questions then. This is the trouble, trying to summarize everything. Right. So Hua was asking sort of, how do we distinguish between international universities and universities that are sort of trying to internationalize? I think that's the key point. Zhenzhou was concerned about employability. Are we really managing to produce graduates who are internationally employable? Because we often think about employers as people who are quite local. And then Ewan was asking, to what extent does this whole idea rest on people, or can we do it, without non-local students, I think was saying. So, anybody I'm glad I don't have to answer any of these questions.
No problem. I think that you point out a very important issue about the kind of dilemma confronting the process of internationalization. It certainly involved in politics and also power. Because for those countries, they chase for internationalization because they think that they are not international enough. For my colleagues mentioned about reputation's sake. And running university these days, no matter you like it a lot, ranking, reputation, have driven people to be more pragmatic about engaging in internationalization, not for the sake of learning. It's for the sake of reputation, for the sake of ranking, which I think problematic. And so you point out a very important issue about the process of internationalization, no matter that you're talking about a country, a society, or a university, when engaging in the process would have be more sensitive about inequality. Yeah, this is definitely. I may not be able to answer your question, but you point out about for those countries, they have the resources, they could involve more about international, less for the student learning and also research and reputation of universities. Of course, universities have a very important role to play to prepare our students for employment. And we cannot shy away from doing so, especially ranking talks about employers' feedback, am I right? But I think we have to move beyond this kind of economic purpose of university, and repurposing about universities is not only about preparing students for future jobs. Though this is a very important task for professors, but more importantly, goes back to my colleague's point, the ChatGPT I mentioned about the last point, responsibility. I think internationalization is for nurturing our future leaders to become a caring leader. They could understand about cross cultures, and they can accept differences. And more importantly, they may not be a peacemaker as such, but at least they could understand the differences by engaging themselves as a mediator of conflicts, which is very important as a citizenship and internationalization. This is the point I want to respond on that. But talking about preparing students for jobs, I think this is important that Hong Kong locals are always focused about the local market. I'm sorry that the market should not be only in Hong Kong, except you are training teacher for the local schools. I keep telling my students, international and regional engagement is so important to, this is some kind of mindset and also the kind of outlook. So when the government nationally and also locally talk about the important trade relationship, cultural exchange with ASEAN, then the question is, are we ready? Have we done enough in terms of engaging our students to get prepared for the kind of cultures, religions, politics, before they can become a good mediator of international trade or cultural exchange? We are not ready. So it goes back about how we have to shape about our curriculum and learning experience for students. More immediately to me, I think ASEAN is part of the very important part, because we cannot do internationalization by limited resources here in Hong Kong, but regional engagement, ASEAN would be something. When you look into the trade, the amount of trade and also the volume of trade that Hong Kong and the nation has engaged with ASEAN country has significantly increased. If this is the market there, not only about local employment, but regional employment, or to push the envelope further about Belt and Road Initiative. There's a lot of opportunity there, but whether our curriculum, whether our learning experience, whether our researcher have prepared our students for this regional and global engagement. I have no answer, but a commercial break. Hanseng University put a lot of emphasis on regional engagement, particularly talk about ASEAN, because this is important trade partners in the region, and not necessarily only the North East Asian like Korea and Japan. We've been working on that. But even so, whether our students are very familiar, except holiday in Japan, Korean holiday, Poksam, but are they ready for taking up the language and culture? They can operate in this very different cultural environment for job. Oh, these are the issues that I want to go back. And the point about I think people matters. People matters. A government, a society, a community, a university, success built upon people. So I hope that the government in Hong Kong still keep on recruiting talents from all around the world, and also retaining them, and creating a very favorable environment to let those expect coming and joining Hong Kong and make our life so different. Though I was locally born, I see the beauty of having people from different cultures working together, and this is good for Hong Kong. If not, then Hong Kong, in my opinion, will be losing its or diminishing about its importance if we are not very serious about recruiting people all around the world. So thank you very much for your trust in Hong Kong. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your questions. I used to work, I worked at the University of Toronto in the international office, and these particular questions about international versus internationalized were quite significant at that time. Why? Toronto is a multinational city. So faculty members there thought that internationalization was not needed because the city and the university were international enough. Right? So international was already there, so you don't need to make an extra effort. However, if you are in the homogeneous society where internationals are quite rare and international topics are rarely discussed and so on, maybe you need an extra effort to internationalize your city, your communities, and so on. But it depends really on people. People here are very important in terms of how they think about the importance of being connected to other people, in terms of how they learn from other people, what exactly they want to learn. Do they want to collaborate? Do they want to compete? How they see their own future in relation to these other people living around them? Do they see their neighbors as their friends or their enemies? Do they want to be part of the global trade, or do they want to really live in a closed society where somebody controls the whole society? So it all depends on people. right? And intellectuals here play a significant role in terms of how they discuss these issues, what they really tell their students, tell their colleagues, how they really engage in this kind of difficult questions sometimes, because sometimes these are difficult questions. So in terms of this type of engagement, local engagement as well as global engagement, international is a great bridge actually to have a lot of these topics really raised to that level where you begin to think and conceptualize your policies, your institutions, and your society. So employment there is a significant part, because what does the university provide for these students in terms of this knowledge which they receive? What kind of knowledge is that, right? Do they engage in comparative methodology? Do they engage in international learning, right? And then what I mentioned before in terms of knowing about others, knowing what others do, how they do it, why they do it, and so on, can be or cannot be part of the curriculum. So curriculum there is very significant element in terms of how we teachers contribute to the curriculum and how students take from the curriculum. Right, so curriculum is a great place for all of us to really communicate and learn. So from that point of view, I think employment here is outcome of intricate type of nature, because employment as a benefit, utilitarian benefit, is one thing. We all need our students to be successful and good taxpayers probably, because the way they learn they will also contribute back to the society. So we want to provide them with good employment, but also that type of employment is pretty much the outcome of good learning, right? As well as ability to be resilient in this ever-changing markets, in the increasingly difficult geopolitical conditions, right? So they need to learn how they learn from others, how they travel, what they do with their jobs, what kind of jobs they do, and so on and so forth. And artificial intelligence as well. I mean, just this is increasingly a challenge, or is an anticipated challenge, right? So we don't know how much of the challenge will be there, but definitely something is going on, right? So we will also have to consider that as a factor. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the differences between the internationalization and internationalized is internationalized seems like to be a completed task. And it's very hard for university to call itself as internationalized, because we are always dominated by certain cultures and always miss other cultures at the same time. But it's very important for the university to open mind, because it is only through this kind of conflict between different cultures or different discourses that we could see alternatively or differently. If we want to foster next generation as the critical thinkers, the most important task is to encourage them to think differently, alternatively, to cross the border again, and to do not take something as granted, do not follow the established norms. So this is the point. And for the people, I think people is really important. It is true that if you keep the open-minded, you could always, appreciate our cultures and to rethink the norms in your own culture. But it's very hard, because we are regulated in the cultures and we are regulated in the norms. So it's very hard for you to push yourself always to think critically or differently. But the communication with people from other cultures could encourage you and permit the opportunity for you to do so. I want to use Shanghai New York University as an example. Shanghai New York University is really interesting because it recruits the students from mainland China and from foreign countries like one in the same proportion. So one Chinese student could be roommated with one foreign student. So at the beginning, they expressed that it's very inconvenient for the Chinese student because they have to live with a foreign roommate And it's very hard for them to, communicate with each other and try to, how to cater for the different, living schedule, or time schedule. But after that, they feel that is quite helpful, not only for the improvement in the English proficiency, but also about the culture, mutual understanding. So this is why I say people matters. And for the employment issue, I think that is quite interesting, because again, the hypothesis about the labor market is basically built upon economic, concepts, and there is no labor market as the market theory assumes. For example, the information is always not, so transparent, and we always emphasize that the responsibility of the students themselves and also the higher education institutions, that we must instill the students with the ability of employment, that is employability, and also as we charge the tuition fees from the students. So we have the responsibility to ensure their future employment. But this is the situation that we only emphasize the supply side. Even in the model of the market, we must both examine the supply and demand side. And also, again, there is no such kind of perfect labor market as the theory assumes. So in critical analysis, it's a blame of politics that the government just try to, put all the responsibilities of employment to the students themselves and also the higher education institutions. So for the employability, there is no specific, description about what skills are required by the labor market. And also, we emphasize the internship and entrepreneurship, educations a lot. But the effects of this kind of, efforts cannot be scientifically proved. So it may be a problem that should be jointly solved by the higher education institutions, the students, and also the employers. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Kaho, to Ivy, and to Anatoly, and thank you very much to everybody coming. And we'll have another start these dialogue series again in September. I've written down a question whilst we've been having this one. I don't know if you think it's a good question. What, if anything, have universities learned from COVID-19 to improve student learning? So, kind of got a little bit of spite in it. Have we really learned anything? So anyway, that's one possibility, but there's many others. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you again soon.